Alright, I've got a piece of aluminium stock in here, all cleaned up. Try to get it as close to the stock as possible. It is a bit longer, but I don't want to put too much effort into it. Let's check the size quickly, just to show you the size that I'm working with. Alright, we got it on 39.95. So we're going to see how it comes out on 39.95, 39.94. We'll see how it comes out, and then we'll know what to work with on our stock. I'm going to be using a thread cutting tool. It's an external thread cutting tool, 10mm. I'll link this in the description. It's from a local supplier. Not sponsored, but always gives very good service, so I'll link to this in the description. Right, one of the things that we need to make sure we do is get it aligned as best possible. I don't have a square to line it up with, so all I usually use is my thread gauge. It is kind of parallel, so just line it up there, drop that into one of the teeth, and just kind of make sure that it's straightened. There we go, that looks right. Just take it in and then give it a visual view against the stock. That looks about right. Okay, come to the start, so we just touch it there. You can see it's actually touching. Right, best is to make your lathe as slow as possible, so I'm going to run it at 80. I've got a quick change gearbox for my threading, so I have set it at 1.5. So that is all set. I'm going to be using the lock nut to drive the carriage. So the carriage has got a dial gauge on it that I can ensure that I engage the half nut at the same stage of the thread turning. Let's mark it off that we can have some good view. Alright, so we've got that. We have touched this off. I zero out my carriage. Make sure I always come back to the right number. We have got it touching. So let's do our first pass, and then we can check with the thread pitch indicator if it's correct. Alright, well, that doesn't exactly give us the best view, but you can check there. There we go, it's actually fitting into that first touch pass. That's there, so that's good. But one of the things that I forgot to add is I've set my compound slide. Yeah, I've set the compound slide to a 60 degrees. To fall in line with the 60-degree cutting tool. So the thread cutting tool geometry on the front. It's got a 60-degree cutting angle, and that's because the threads that I'm cutting are 60 degrees. The compound slide is now set to 60 degrees, so instead of feeding in with my x-axis on the lathe, so instead of feeding in like that, I will be feeding in with the compound slide at a 60 degrees, and what that does is it helps with the cutting force. So if I cut in straight, both sides of the cutting tool are engaging on the steel, meaning that there's cutting force on both sides. So what I'll be doing is feeding in with the compound. I'm feeding in like this to the side actually. So the one edge of the cutting tool isn't engaged. I'm just cutting on this side, so it'll be cutting on the tip as a forward motion, but then it'll be cutting on the leading edge into the thread. So that's just to minimize the force on the tool. It's not that a big deal when cutting on the aluminium because it's soft. As soon as we move into something like steel, even the cast iron should relatively be soft enough to just go in straight. But I'm going to try out using the compound slide with the 60 degrees. Alright, so I'm now heading into the next stage of the cutting. Let's just make sure that I've got it right. Okay, zero out. Alright, so I'm going to start with the next threads. Let's see how it goes. It's not looking too bad. Probably would have noticed the marker disappeared quite quick in the beginning, and that's because I engaged the half nut on the wrong dial number, which meant it engaged to not on the same on the right place, and it then went a bit skew. But that's not a problem. It was only on the first, it was literally the first cut, deeper cut. Alright, so still got a little bit more to go, depth wise. Let's get it to fit. I'm not putting a lot of force on, so I'm not even going to bother put any tail support on. I'll just continue as is. in. It's starting to go on. I've lost the chamfer on the front. So the reason I leave it running for a while is, here you can see, here's the indicator. So the indicator's got increments on it, 1 to 8. So I literally wait for it, for the 1 to come around, and I engage the half nut. So here's the half nut engagement over here. So I wait for the 1 to come around, and then I engage on the 1. And with the mill running, so with the lathe running so slow, it takes a while for the 1 to come around. I engaged it too quickly before the 1. That's why the markings disappeared, but I then got all the others right. Okay, so we just wait for 1 to come around. There we go. It's going on. It just needs to be cleaned up a bit. A light cut, and it should be right. I'm going to get a file, and we can put a bit of a chamfer on this and then see how it works. There we go. Nice smooth fit. That's good. There's no play on it. That's good, because we don't want any play on the nut itself. Great. So one of the things that I've done is on the compound slide, I've been using the measurements on here. I've recorded how deep I've gone on the compound slide, so I'll use that as an indicator when doing the collet chuck, because then at least I know, okay, I must stop just short of, I reached 43 on the gauge here, so I'll run it till probably about 40, measure it, make sure that I haven't gone too deep, and then do some fine threads. Well, that worked out pretty well. I'm gonna take this off, take the chuck off, and pop the collet chuck back on, and then we can start on the threads. Right, stock is back in. Let's get it marked up. Okay, it's marked, just needs to dry. Alright, compound slide is set. Just got to touch it off. There we go, it's touching off there. I'll zero it. There we go, zeroed. Cross slide is zeroed. Let's just make sure we can get into. There we go. So that's more or less where I'll need to disengage the half nut. Right. Okay, so that was the scratch pass. Can check if the scratch pass lines up. Yes, it does. You can actually feel the thread gauge fits into the grooves. So that's good. So let's do our first feed in. Let's give it a go. So I've just got to wait for the one to come around again. Okay, reached 40 on compound slide gauge, so I'm going to give it a test. There we go, that fits on. Gets a little tight over there, so it's not perfect yet. It does feel a little bit tight, so I'm going to give it a little bit more. Give it another check. More than I wanted to take off, but okay. Nut fits on good. Doesn't really have play on it. I probably was lucky, I just hit it in the right place. The compound slide went to 42, basically the same as the aluminium, but that fits on good. I'm happy with that. Could have been a little tighter, but couldn't have asked for anything better. Let's just clean up this edge. Looks good.